Welcome back to the road to Montebourg for the 11th mission of the campaign. It's now the day after the last two battles, June the 11th, and having broken through the German lines on this flank, US forces are pushing for Le Ham. The far left of the advance is still the responsibility of 2nd Battalion 325th Gilder Infantry Regiment, and at 11:30 in the morning they are in position to launch an attack across the railway line, across a tributary of the Murderette River, and up a slope to seize the little village of La Ham, as a prelude to taking Le Ham itself, which is a little further up the road. It doesn't look so bad on the big map, but getting onto the actual battlefield, it's pretty clear that the 325th are going to go through the ringer again. This looks like the last uphill struggle of Hell in the Hedgerows pumped up to 11. There's about 500 metres of open ground from the railway line to the nearest field boundary that will offer no protection whatsoever, and 100 metres of that is water obstacle and swamp. This is not good. Also not good is the fact that some other elements have carried over from Hell in the Hedgerows. I have the same force, Dog and Easy companies, who haven't had any replacements, and the briefing indicates that the enemy consists of at least 2 platoons well dug in with heavy weapons sighted to cover the open ground. The silver lining here is that, according to the briefing, the enemy is likely to fall back at some point to preserve their strength for a showdown at Le Ham itself, and I should, quote, seek to occupy and control the objective. Feels a little gamey to read into this, but with my 2 objectives of taking Le Ham and destroying the enemy force balancing each other out at 200 points each, it looks like the player has the opportunity to overcome the difficult opening by moving quickly to overrun the objective at the back. This mission may have an escape hatch built in. And that's nice and all, but I still intend to have a good stab at it. More detailed examination of the ground shows up some interesting features. The first is this road. Close to my forces, it runs all the way down to the water and offers a solid path through the swamp, which my pixel trooper might be able to take advantage of to avoid getting literally bogged down. Closer to the enemy, the road is lined with tall bocage, which serves to break line of sight. If I can get far enough forward on one flank, this will mask my forces from enemy positions on the other flank. If the enemy is planning to withdraw, then it would make sense for him to set up where he can fall back safely. He's going to have problems disengaging from the low bocage of the front fields without getting shot in the back, so it seems safe to assume that he's dug in behind the tall bocage a little deeper. He still has a decent field of fire here because the ground slopes up towards the village and he's gaining elevation, but at the same time it does create a little dead ground to his front that I might be able to exploit. Finally, the weather conditions are a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's midday and the sky's clear, meaning visibility is as good as it will ever be, but on the other hand, the wind strength is only gentle and it's coming out of the west, so unlike Hell in the Hedgerows, masking enemy positions with smoke should be relatively effective. From all these little details, a plan begins to emerge. Just like Hell in the Hedgerows, it's getting into the enemy line that's the hard part. Once I've gotten a toehold, it's relatively easy to unravel the defence from the side, so what I'm really looking to do is punch my way in. And I don't necessarily need a lot of men to do that. I can potentially get it done on a quite narrow front. Of all the approaches, the right flank looks like it might yield the best results. The 2 fields there are split by more tall bocage, meaning that the defence is split too. And along with some subtle differences in elevation, hugging the right map edge should minimise the danger to small teams of pixel troopmen as they move forward. Of course, I'll still have to deal with any defenders in the far right field, but I'll be able to concentrate my fire support on a 100-metre stretch of hedgerow and, bunkers notwithstanding, it will be easier to suppress than other areas. So the plan in a nutshell is to punch right. It's about that simple. I've got an hour and 10 minutes to get this done, so there's no need to rush. I'm going to start off by getting up to the hedgerow on the edge of my deployment zone and getting a base of fire into position before slipping a few scout teams forward to see what happens. I still have the 75mm pack howitzers in support, and though I probably have enough time to call them in effectively here, I'm still getting a head start organised in the deployment phase. They're set to drop smoke on the end of the tall bocage along the road at the 15-minute mark. It's a single gun mission, which will drop a few smoke rounds a minute until it's out of ammo, rather than splurging all the smoke in one go. It should maximise the length of time the concealment lasts and take advantage of the wind direction to best effect. I'm probably going to get some spots on the enemy before this comes in, so if it's not going to be very useful, I can always cancel it and dump the smoke elsewhere. And the first spots indicate that I might need to. On turn 1, getting my base of fire set up on the hedgerow reveals a pair of wooden bunkers on the centre left. These are in a bit of a weird place. We were just looking at how the barrage lines could restrict line of sight for the defenders here, and while these bunkers are well set up so their firing slits are low to the ground and they have some concealment in front with the budding orchard, the hedgerows tunnelise their view to the point that I can very easily avoid entering their field of fire. There are a few other interesting things about these bunkers. Firstly, having spotted them, I can eyeball the occupants. Apparently my spotting units have some pretty amazing binoculars. And with each bunker holding 3 pixel truppen, all of whom have webbing pouches for the long straight 30 round MP40 magazines, it's pretty easy to pin them down as 3-man scout teams, and I can add them onto the 2-platoon template the briefing indicates for the defenders. Secondly, they're about 700 meters away from my base of fire, and if they can see any of my pixel truppen, they obviously think that the range is too great to engage. That's fine with me, but as the turns slip by and my scouts on either flank get to crossing the stream and slogging through the marsh, I'm not making any other spots. This is a little disconcerting, especially given how quickly the bunkers were noticed, so in an attempt to attract attention and draw fire, I have some of the LMGs target the bunkers. They're actually able to occasionally get rounds through the firing slits, which is pretty impressive given the range, but the overall effect of the fire is negligible. It doesn't hit any enemy pixel truppen, and it doesn't draw any return fire that would generate new spots. In fact, the whole situation is getting to be unnervingly quiet. On the right, there is no resistance, and my scouts are able to get so far forward with so little trouble that I'm already starting to feed dog company across by teams. One of the 60mm mortars managed to get a lucky spot on a German fire team way up the map, which, as well as giving my mortars something to shoot at, fills in another piece of the puzzle. It's really starting to look like the enemy isn't set up to cover the open ground like I'd feared. Instead, it appears that he's focused on defending the village. There's some logic for this. Setting up further back up the hill means he can avoid the worst of any direct fire I can bring to bear and rely on short-range firefights in the fields instead of longer-range exchanges, but that open ground is such a good kill zone, I'm a little confused as to why the enemy isn't covering it better. Regardless, the focus of my planning is set to change. Originally, I was mostly concentrating on getting across the danger area. Now that that doesn't seem to be the obstacle I was afraid of, I need to switch to actually taking the objective. The first thing to do is to cancel the smoke mission for the 75s and instead start the process to call in a light fire mission on the village instead. Hopefully this will soften the defence up by the time I get there. As for the actual attack, I'm already leaning on attacking on my right, but events on the left push me even further in this direction. Although the leading scout team has gotten across without any problems, the follow-up teams have to dodge a quick mortar barrage and take a couple of casualties to a sniper. Obviously the Germans have a few eyes on that flank, and given that I'm pushing the right already, it doesn't make a lot of sense to divert forces left as well. Coming up this way will also allow me to cut the road to the Ham and attack the village from the flank, which should allow me to come at the enemy from an unexpected angle if he stays to fight, and be in a position to catch him in an ambush if he tries to retreat. Of course, this requires me to break through the enemy defence on this flank first. There are a few German teams hanging around up here who I'm able to overwhelm with brute force, but advancing up this orchard draws fire from an MG42 that I don't get a solid location for until after a few turns. It's up on the same line as the village, and when spreading my attack into the right centre reveals more defenders behind the next hedgerow, including some who look as if they're starting to fall back, I'm finally able to start bringing my firepower to bear. Along with the 75s readjusting onto the village after briefly hitting the bunker position, I have an array of light and medium mortars that I can use to quickly smother the enemy positions. We're in familiar territory now. The hard part is finding things to smack about with my superior firepower, which is proving considerably more effective in this mission than it was in Hell in the Hedgerows. While all this has been going on, my scouts on the left haven't been idle. They've been probing up that flank and discovered some more German fire teams set up on the barrage line behind the bunkers. Thanks to some gaps in the barrage, they're able to hook around and enfilade the enemy, wiping out one fire team and spotting more targets for my fire support to service. They're not strong enough to take on the bunkers though. They'll have to wait until I've cleared some more room on the right. This takes a little while, but the bunkers are essentially peripheral. I mostly wanted to take them out because they gave me such a hard time a couple of missions ago, and my main effort is in securing the far right. This is accomplished without any real issues. Every now and again a lone German pixel Truppen appears, trying to escape down the road to Laham, but they're all stopped cold. Punching through the fields towards the objective reveals no enemies, except a few more Germans attempting to flee, and with 11 minutes still on the clock, the enemy surrenders. This of course translates into a total victory, which I was certainly not expecting when I first eyeballed this mission. Casualties are surprisingly light as well. Despite getting bogged down here, I've only lost 6 dead and 5 wounded, keeping my losses beneath the 10% threshold. The enemy have suffered heavily, 53 killed and 26 wounded, as well as a single man taken prisoner. Most of this work was done by the mortars and the artillery. The 60mm took down 30 altogether, the 81s were responsible for 9 and the 75s caused 11. With this map essentially being a forward slope, a significant portion of the enemy defence was exposed to my base of fire at the bottom of the hill, and as I've mentioned, the hard part was getting my infantry forward enough to find targets. By means of comparison, most of my casualties were the result of either the defenders' natural ability to spot and fire first, or some over-eager advances on my part. With some enemy spots clearly trying to fall back, here and there I moved a little faster than I should have and overreached, not wanting to let the enemy get away as easily as they did in the last mission. But overall, this one turned out to be a lot less difficult than I was expecting. 2nd Battalion at 325th Glider Infantry Regiment is now sat on the high ground overlooking Laham and is preparing to assault its final objective. Meanwhile, in the next mission, Easy Company 2nd Battalion at 505th is going to be mounting a holding attack off to the east to try and pin some of Laham's defenders in place, make life a little easier for the glider infantry. Hope you all enjoyed this video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.